Welcome to Lesson 7 of Image Bearers. I want to remind you that as we look into the lives of people, that none of them are superhuman. They're just everyday people who are living out the image of God by being who God created them to be. And the same can be true for each one of us. God gave us each unique characteristics, talents, abilities, and interests, and then placed us in certain circumstances so that we would reveal a little bit about who God is. Today, we're going to look into the life of Rosa Parks, a civil rights activist who found herself in the right place and at the right time to take a simple stand that would mark the beginning of a movement that has God's hands all over it. This past week would have been her 108th birthday. But before we get too much into her life, let's start with a game. This morning, I want to share with you 3 qualities of Rosa Parks that reflect the image of our Creator. Number 1, courage. On December 1st, 1955, Rosa Parks boarded a bus that, in accordance with the law, segregated black from white passengers, and she sat down in an empty seat in the colored section. As the bus traveled down its route, all the seats in the white section filled up, and she was ordered to give up her seat to allow a white passenger to sit. She refused and was arrested and convicted of violating the segregation law of the Montgomery City Code. You know, it takes no small amount of courage to defy the law of a government, no matter how unjust you feel that law may be. And today we celebrate her courage because it set America on a path to formally end racial segregation. Yet there is still more work to be done, and therefore we must continue to tap into the source of all courage, God Himself, who because of His unlimited power and knowledge has no reason to fear. Ephesians chapter 6 verse 10 reminds us to be strong in the Lord and in His mighty power. And Psalm 23 encourages us that even though we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we will fear no evil, for God is with us. The knowledge of God's presence is all that we need to gather the strength to courageously take a stand against injustice, which fittingly brings us to number 2, justice. Justice is the idea of fairness, where evil actions are punished and good actions are rewarded. And when man-made laws provide undue favoritism, they must be challenged. And while human justice, because of our sinful tendencies and limited point of view, will always be imperfect, we nonetheless must strive to do our best. For Rosa on that day on the bus, justice meant the freedom to choose any seat on the bus, and the right to not have it taken from her based on the color of her skin. And Rosa is correct. Justice, as God has demonstrated it through His Word, is never determined by the color of skin, but solely based on one's actions. Matthew 25 provides the perfect illustration of godly justice through a parable told by Jesus. Matthew 25, starting in verses 31, it reads, "The Son of Man will come again in His great glory. With all His angels, He will be king and sit on His great throne. All the nations of the world will be gathered before Him, and He will separate them into 2 groups, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. The Son of Man will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. And then the king will say to the people on his right, "Come, my Father has given you his blessing. Receive the kingdom God has prepared for you since the world was made. I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was alone and away from home and you invited me into your house. I was without clothes and you gave me something to wear. I was sick and you cared for me. I was in prison and you visited me." Then the good people will answer, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and give you food, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you alone and away from home and invite you into our house? When did we see you without clothes and give you something to wear? When did we see you sick or in prison and care for you?" And then the king will answer, "I tell you the truth, anything you did for even the least of my people here, you also did for me." And then the king will say to those on his left, "Go away from me. You will be punished. Go into the fire that burns forever, that was prepared for the devil and his angels. I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was alone and away from home. You did not invite me into your house. I was without clothes, and you gave me nothing to wear. I was sick and in prison, and you did not care for me." And then those people will answer, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or alone and away from home or without clothes or sick or in prison? When did we see these things and not help you?" And then the king will answer, "I tell you the truth. Anything you refused to do for even the least of my people here, you refused to do for me." These people will go off to be punished forever, but the good people will go to live forever. God, through the avenue of justice, will always protect and provide for the innocent while holding the oppressor accountable for his actions. Number 3, equality. Rosa's actions on the bus that day were part of a much larger effort known as the Civil Rights Movement that involved boycotts and sit-ins and protests and much, much more, all in an effort to bring to light the disparity between the rights and the opportunities presented to white people versus black people. Skin color has absolutely nothing to do with anything of consequence, and yet it continues to be a dividing line in our culture. The quest for equality is a noble one when we look ahead into the future that God has promised for us. A future in our eternal home, gathered together with people from every nation, tribe, people, and language of the earth. John writes in Revelation chapter 7, verses 9 through 12, that they were all standing before the throne and before the Lamb, wearing white robes and holding palm branches in their hands. They were shouting in a loud voice, "Salvation belongs to our God, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb." All the angels were standing around the throne, and the elders and the 4 living creatures, they all bowed down on their faces before the throne and worshiped God, saying, "Amen. Praise, glory, wisdom, thanks, honor, power, and strength belong to our God forever and ever. Amen." You know, what an incredible image that is, where people of all backgrounds and cultures and even skin colors are united in their worship to God. Our God is a God of unity, not division. And that is why that we need to be a people who are united and not divided. Together, we bear his image. And so today's challenge is to have the eyes to see the injustice around us and the courage to take a stand. I think what I enjoy the most about Rosa's bus story is that it wasn't a planned action. Her act of courage happened because the opportunity was placed before her. She didn't go out of her way to find it. It came to her, and she reacted in a bold and beautiful way. Injustice is still around us today. We just have to have the courage to stand up to it when we see it.